Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
I propose to discuss today the impact of our environmental and cultural variables on organization structure and style. The topic itself needs some clarifications, because when I am talking of the impact of environment and cultural variables on organization structure, it is my purpose to focus on the kind of impact it makes and the kind of changes it makes, and how organization structure would respond to environment and the cultural elements. One aspect of the socio-cultural variables has been discussed in the preceding lecture. In this one, the emphasis is on environment and structure of the organization. We shall be also looking at organizational style. Now, the word style here is somewhat different from the way it is used in the fashion world or the way it is used in day to day parlance. We will be looking at the kind of choices which the organization exercises in the conduct of its business. So, that is the organization style. For example, there is a certain way in which decision making will be undertaken in IIT Delhi, yet another way, say in Delhi University. It does not make one superior to the other, but the styles are different. It is rooted in the fact that the statutes are different. It is also conditioned by the fact that the rules and regulations are different, and therefore, it follows that practices will be different. For example, in Delhi University, a head of a department has a statutory status. In IIT Delhi, the head does not have a statutory status. He holds headship on behalf of the director. Therefore, the responsibility of the department is really with the director, on whose behalf the head works. Now, again, these are different styles. In the context of IIT, since it is an institute, the style will be consistent with the functioning of an institute. Delhi University is a multi-faculty entity with a lot of affiliated units. There are several colleges which are run by trusts, and there is a certain funding pattern from the UGC and from what comes from the trust. Yet a degree will be on behalf of a university, and I do not want to get into too many nitty-gritties of that, but all that I am seeking to convey to you is the style of decision making in the two entities will be different, rooted in the causative factors which I just now mentioned. So, through this discourse on impact of environmental and cultural variables on organization structure and style, it is important that you understand the scope of the subject matter and not impart to it a layman's understanding on how it would work. The topics which I will be covering are the following: the external environment, which I have divided into two tiers, the first tier and the second tier. The first tier, that is the outer layer of the environment, will be taken up under general economy, suppliers, customers and competition. Not that these four categories are final or absolute or all inclusive, but somewhere to start the process of learning, it is important to have certain broad classifications with the general awareness that these classifications may be somewhat one of convenience to facilitate understanding, and that there is nothing sacrosanct about it. There is nothing absolute about it. In fact, it would not be even possible to claim that these are exhaustive classifications, but this is, to my way of thinking, a good point to begin the discussion. The second tier deals with political and legal forces, technology, international forces, customs, cultures, socio-cultural forces. Now, we shall go through them item for item and see what it has to do with both structure and style. The internal environment of an organization has been divided under two sets, those of the managers and those of the workers. In both cases, we will touch upon values and ethics and values. In other words, what are the values of a managerial cadre and the ethics of a managerial cadre which impact structure, and similarly the same questions will be asked on ethics, and then we shift the category to the workers and see what we have to say there. Now, generally it helps to look at organizations with a systems approach, and we have discussed that earlier on too. For the purposes of the present discussion, there is the general systems approach, there is the property of dynamic homeostasis, and there is a goal oriented growth. Now, the homeostasis, that the state of equilibrium, is also in a dynamic mode. In other words, it moves, it is not frozen. Goal oriented growth means growth is not just random. It must be directed towards the goal. The sort of difference between letting a hedge grow wild in all directions and pruning the hedge in a manner in which it has shape. So, if it is just growing without any sense of direction, it is not growth for our purposes. Yeah, technically it is possible to argue it is growth, but we are dealing with a specialized exploration. We are dealing with issues of organization management in the discipline of management. Therefore, the definition of growth is clear. It has to do with goal oriented growth. As I told you, the external environment is divided into first tier and second tier. It does not mean that it is a hierarchy. You can conceive of the tiers in a set of concentric circles. So, all that you have to understand is what are the set of interfaces with the environment that we wish to take up first. That is meant by first tier. Do not take it in a hierarchical way. If you put it in a circular mode, then you will understand first tier and second tier more clearly. The first tier, as I have already briefed you, deals with general economy, suppliers, customers, competition. What do I mean by general economy? There is of course a definition, but before we get to that, my itemization of the second tier, which has already been done before, a quick walkthrough, and we shall talk of technology, customs, cultures, political, legal forces, international forces and socio-cultural forces. Now, what is meant by technology? And this is a very important word in organization management. We have to define technology, and technology is not just hardware, but it covers software, and more than the software, it also covers a method of doing work. There is a technology of lecture delivery, though there is no hardware of a lecture delivery. There is no software of a lecture delivery. A lecture would have a structure, the lecture would have a logic, the lecture would have a flow, the lecture must have clarity. Put that all together, and that is the technology of the lecture method. So, we are using the word technology in a very wide sense. There is a correlation between technology and structure. The type of organizational forms which grow are determined very largely by the technological variable, and of course, there is an interaction of technology and culture. Before we get into that, let me explain to you the key words, as I was referring to a little while ago, on what is meant by general economy. You know, it is easy to go philosophical when you do not understand something, just as it is easy to go philosophical when you have a deep rooted understanding of something. So, that it is easy to go philosophical when you know plenty and when you know nothing. Trouble begins when somebody who knows plenty has to take on somebody who knows nothing, because then begins the puerile discussion. You know what actually happens is. You have no idea what happens, but then you must talk for the sake of talking, and if you are conditioned to finding logic for the indefensible, then of course you are invincible. Remember what I said, if you are adept at finding logic for the indefensible, then you are invincible, then you can't be defeated, because you have nothing to say. So, what do you lose anyhow? You just go on arguing. We are not talking of that category, we are talking of a category which seeks to understand what is actually the situation, and therein you must recognize that general economy will impact the organization very much in the same way in which you can't run faster than the train you are on. You may be an Olympic sprinter, but what can you do? You run from the last bogie of the train to the engine and you run back, but you are not covering any more distance than what the train is doing. Similarly, the organization cannot function any better than what the general economy is about. It will determine the supply chain management, it will determine the nature of the throughput process, it will determine the outcomes, it will determine your distribution networks, it will impact your marketing, it will have an effect on the accounts receivable. If there is short money supply, then obviously your payments will be delayed. If your payments will be delayed, then the funds available to keep the organization going will be sluggish. If those are sluggish, then of course, no matter what kind of technology you have in terms of the actual shop floor of the organization has very little meaning, because it won't work. So, general economy does impact the organization, and the structure is shaped to cope with that kind of environment. If there is a shortage, then there will be an emphasis on the supply chain management in terms of volumes. You will need a different kind of storage system. You will require a different nature of backups. On the other hand, if your supply chain management is adequate, you will focus more on quality, then your choices will be there. And I can give you several examples, but hopefully what I have said to you so far will help you to understand the relationship of general economy with the structure and therefore the style of functioning. Who calls the shots? The suppliers determine structure and style. It is well known that once you have bought a certain type of goods or once you have brought an equipment, repeat order is not an issue, because the quality has been checked out, the prices have been checked out. Only if a time gap has passed which is larger than the normal level of confidence it would raise, then you will have to call for another tender to make sure the prices haven't fluctuated. But say if it is from 1 week to another, the chances of fluctuations are not very high. And mind you, I am not talking of the exceptions, therefore, do not think of an isolated example where prices would change even in a week. We are talking of sufficiently large volumes of which there are a pattern. We are trying to introduce you to the subject. We are not talking of the rare examples of an exception. There are several ways of getting confused. One is pretending you understand when you are not even listening. The second is pretending to know more than what you actually know. The third, of course, is keep thinking of the exceptions, that is, therefore, you will never get the dominant pattern. The important thing is first to get the dominant pattern, then you can get into the exceptions, which is why the adage has come, the exception proves the rule. I do not want to get into that kind of a discourse here, but I do wish you to understand that the nature of your suppliers will impact both your structure and style. In fact, if it is a proprietary item that the suppliers are providing, then the task is even easier. So, if you are positioned in a sector where you need proprietary items, proprietary means the item is exclusive to a supplier, it is he has proprietary control. So, it is not as if he is facing competition. That would happen when he has the exclusive patent rights to it, which is why even today it is popularly believed that the composition of the mixture which goes into the making of a Coca-Cola is a carefully guarded secret. They do not know it. I mean, many people really doubt that, but it is a good proposition. You have almost made it a proprietary item. Why almost? It is totally a proprietary item. Then you can do what you want with your prices. And of course, the dil may want more or your mind may want more, but the fact is you are ensuring that you create whipping up a demand, and I do not want to get into the marketing techniques, because that is also environmentally determined. There is something palpably amusing about pushing a good on dil mange more. And I had the interesting experience of listening to my good friend Mike Khanna, who was the CEO of Hindustan Thompson Associates, who coined that phrase as an adaptation of an international slogan in the Indian environment. It is not an Indian slogan. Coca-Cola had been using it elsewhere. What Hindustan Thompson Associates did was adapted it to Indian conditions, but that is another story. I do not want to get into that. You are pushing something in the domain of dil. This means do not reason about it, just be carried by the temptation. Therefore, any attempt to reason whether you should have Coca-Cola or not is something which a priori is ruled out. That is creating an environment. The proposition to get hold of is the style of the organization is to a certain extent and not exclusively impacted by the environment, be it at the supply side or be it at the marketing side. Therefore, again, soon after suppliers we talk of customers. You adopt the style of the customers. If the customers are semi-idiotic, you better have a style which suits the semi-idiotic. Do not talk intellectual stuff to the semi-idiotic. You have to talk of some brand of illogic which the semi-idiotic finds very appealing. which is what explains the language of the advertisements. Hum mangta hai. Now, I will not name the product because there is no point in reflecting on any product or any company adversely, but if anybody speaks that kind of a language, that is the kind of intellectual background. Nobody who knows anything about Hindi would say mangta hai, and it worked as a slogan. So, it is a question of what is the type of customer you are dealing with, which is a figure from the environment. Then of course, competition. The competition determines what is the style you adopt, because one person says it is official, the other person says what is there about official, we are the preferred. One organization says you come to us along with banking, we offer you coffee, tea, we take care of this, we take care of that. So, the rejoinder is pure banking, nothing else. It depends what appeals to you. The long and short of it is your level of cognitive refinement will determine what appeals to you. One of my friends asked me a very interesting question several years ago. He said, "Doc, help me to understand, why do people giggle so much when they say, let's go and have a drink? Why can't they simply say, let's go and have a drink? Let's go yaar and let's have a drink." Why that extra pep? You may be just having whiskey, which has got nothing to do with any fuzz. If you are having an aerated drink, I could understand, and they keep laughing. There is nothing in alcohol which will tickle you. So, the culture is, if you go anticipating a good time. Now, if you go anticipating a good time, you tend to giggle, you tend to laugh, which is why merriment often goes with laughter. Nobody says, now give me more food so that I can stuff myself. You say something, get me more yaar, I really love it yaar. No, this is style being determined by the environment. The important thing is, through the style you begin to analyze. Therefore, the significance of the topic, impact of environment and culture on structure and style. Remember what I have told you at every occasion possible. There must be a felt need to do something. Why must this topic be studied at all? For the simple reason that it gives you an entry into organization management from the point of view of the significance of the interfaces. Note what I am saying, from the point of view of understanding the significance of the interfaces. How do two components interact with each other? Because this is a live interaction. The impact of environment on style, the impact of environment on structure, the impact of environment on culture. In certain cultural environments, it is dumb thing to say, no, whatever you may say, don't say no. Think about it, I'll come back. Whereas in another cultural environment, a no is a no. So, the way you do business is determined by the cultural factors. A lot of Asian cultures, everything is personalized. Do it for my sake. Why should I do it for your sake? Forget doing business on the level of do it for my sake. Even when you eat it for my sake. I can't understand that logic. Why must I eat for your sake? I am eating in my stomach. Why should I eat it for your sake? I know you are a very good cook. I have already had 3 vadas. Why must I have 5? Do it because I am asking. Why are you asking? But it is a done thing, especially if you have cooked specially for somebody. You are supposed to force that person to eat till he says, never again will I eat at your place. And what is more, you are expected to go on appreciating it. So, periodically you will be asked, how does it taste? Nice. Just nice? No, no, brilliant. Just brilliant. Hasn't it been cooked well? Oh, it has been cooked tremendously. Just say so, na. Now, culture. You can't get away from it. And if you don't do that, you are the oddball. And the fellow doesn't even appreciate, he just ate it. So, what do you want me to do? Or better still, giving praise where it is not due. You know the food is terrible, but you keep eating and it keeps saying, delicious, absolutely, never had anything so good in my life. In another culture they won't, they would just push it away and say, change it, or I don't like it. No, how come you won't like it? You have got to like it. So, culture determines style, and while dealing with certain styles, you have to find out, does this, when this person says yes, does he mean a yes? If he says no, does he mean a no? Or his no is a maybe, or his yes is a maybe. You know the definition of a diplomat. When he says yes, he means maybe. When he says maybe, he means no. And if he says no, he is not a diplomat. Now, if that is the kind of a diplomat you have to be, then you better have a new dictionary with you and keep comparing the profession and the conditioning. Then you better ask, is he a proper diplomat or is he a half-baked diplomat? Has he become an Indian Foreign Service officer through promotion, or has he been a direct recruit, or what is more, is he on deputation? Then you find out his background. It becomes an endless process. Complicated as it may be, the truth is that culture determines style in a very large extent, and that is where the equations do not work. That is where judgment becomes necessary, and that is where practice makes perfect. Of course, competition also determines structure and style, and I have given you illustrations there too. The second tier has got to do with technology, customs, cultures, political legal forces, international forces, socio-cultural forces. Let me walk you through technology in a greater detail, because that is one of the dominant determinants of both structure and style. So, there is a defining technology, the technology has to be defined, or I have done so already. There are types of technology. There is process technology, there is batch technology, there is unit technology. The amazing thing is, a lot of people who claim to have done engineering have no idea of how many different types of technology there are. Indeed, they do not even know the difference between technology, engineering and equipment. They talk of equipment as technology. No, there is a whole world of a difference between an equipment and a technology. Just as there are important distinctions between equipment and engineering. I am not going to get into niceties there, because we do not have the time, nor is it our brief. It is my job to explain to you the impact of technology, and therefore, I thought I will mention that there are types of technology, and there is a correlation between technology and structure, and there is an interaction of technology and culture. A manager of a textile unit behaves very differently from the manager of a software unit. Just get the two simples and get them to talk. You get behind a curtain by the language they use, by the way they refer, by the way they explain themselves. You will make out who comes from a IT sector and who comes from a textile sector. I do not want to make any generalizations here, which may not be very flattering, but the fact is IT people do talk in a certain way. The textile man doesn't talk that way. You meet them both to find out what's the difference. You will be able to make the difference yourself. You don't need to be guided here. Technology of work refers to the process by which an organization converts input to output. Now, this is again one component of the definition of technology, technology of work. So, let me repeat, technology of work is the methodology through which you convert an input into an output, which refers to knowledge, skills and techniques. The variations may be at the level of automation, mechanization, computerization. The variations may be at the levels of use of softwares. The variations may be at the level of teamwork or otherwise. And while working on a piece for publication today, I made a distinction which I think is very important and can be carried to an instructional situation. The basic unit of development at work is rarely an individual, it is always a team. Because work is always team related, performance is always team related. Even my presentation here is a team effort. There are people working in the control room. There will be a system working for beaming it. So, there is a back office at work. Back office need not necessarily be technical, but it is a feeder. So, very often what you see may be important, but it is just one component. No work can ever be accomplished singly. In fact, the quip is that the era of heroes like Napoleon or Alexander are over. There will be no Napoleon anymore. So, the basic unit of reference is the team. It is another matter that the quality of the individuals who compose the team also give character to the team. But it is another story. We have referred to it and we may be back on it depending upon the circumstances of the topic which we are talking about. But technology of work refers to the process by which an organization converts input into outputs, and that has to do with knowledge, skills and techniques. And this is where, as I said, nothing matters but capability. Anything other than capability, ladies and gentlemen, is merely a good visiting card. If you have a visiting card of certain order, it will give you a quicker appointment. You may use your religion, you may be using a caste, you may be using a parentage, you may be using the old boys network, you may be arriving in a snazzy limousine, doesn't go very far. Usually people do not even see the kind of car you are getting out of, say, the guard, and the guard is not important in the conversation. And in most organizations, you are dropped in the porch and then the car drives away. So, how does it matter whether you are arriving in a Merc or you are arriving in a Jalopy? The key word in organization management has been, as has been abundantly emphasized, is capability. Dropping the name of your great granduncle who owned 3/4 of Madhya Pradesh is no good. First of all, such an uncle does not exist. 2, even if he did, so what? Your great granduncle or granduncle or uncle, no matter what generation he came from, is not going to get the job. You are going to get the job. And believe me, if the organization is worth anything, they will not let you keep the job if you can't perform. because you can't run an organization full of 190 people, none of them know their job. Then there is no organization. And this needs to be absorbed by every student of management. Forget about everything else. Focus on capability. The other assets may or may not be of use. It is not for me to comment on it or discuss it here, but it is important for me to tell you work technology refers to your knowledge, skills and techniques, which then become the knowledge, skills and techniques of the organization, which is how the organization functions, and indeed which is how the organization makes money, which is how the organization makes profit, which is how it would pay your salary. If the organization is not earning, you will not get your salary. How long can an organization work in deficit? If you talk of it in financial management terms, if there are no profits, you are eating into your capital, and if your capital keeps getting corroded, your organization will go kaput, which is the German for collapse, even before you can say Jack Robinson, which is an American expression. So, for global students, which is fashionable these days, everyone must be a global student with a global curriculum, with a global spread. Everything is global. Nobody needs to worry about his house anymore. Business school after business school, they are designing global curricula. Baba, that's great. By all means, create managers for the global empire. What about my little place where I want a few chocolates made? What about my ways of processing agricultural products so that the paddy gets converted into grain which I can then buy? Who makes those little things with global syllabus? You see, all I am wanting to do is nothing wrong with having a global syllabus and creating a global mindset for a global village. By all means, bless everyone with that. But those are not the only needs. Nothing against anyone or anything. But create the local. And believe me, there is more money in the local than there is in the global. Ultimately, it does not matter what is cooking in a 7-star deluxe hotel kitchen. What matters is what is cooking in the kitchen of your little hut, because that is what you will eat. One of the major dangers for sound managerial thinking is the power of cliches. You hear a thing so often that you start believing it. The classical example is the new millennium was ushered in 1 full year before it was due. And people were sitting off islands in Pacific watching the sunrise in the east to tell their descendants what it was to see the new millennium rise. The truth was the new millennium was not even rising, it was 1 year to go, because nothing begins in the 0 year. So, how can the new millennium begin in 2000? It would begin in 2001. A very simple fact which any son of a woman would know by simple statistical techniques, carried away by a whole slogan, new millennium is here, let us come and celebrate. Chance of a lifetime. So, everyone was celebrating new millennium, downing whiskies, guzzling parties, sunrises, cruises, what have you, to discover new millennium was not born at all. That is the power of slogan mongering. It creates monkeys of all rational thinking, because it is so much around you that if you did not join the chorus, you are the oddball. That is the basic difference between a thinking person and an unthinking person. All that I am trying to tell you is, understand what moves management. Technology must be developed in conjunction with resources needed for capturing and retaining the customer. Therefore, it is not a question of whether you are high tech, medium tech, low tech, non-tech. There are a lot of phrases about technology which I do not understand. Maybe it is my own illiteracy. You know, there is this appropriate technology and rural development. I just do not understand that expression. What is appropriate technology? My belief is any technology which survives is appropriate. How come only with rural development you want appropriate technology? Can you fly a spacecraft with inappropriate technology? Again, the power of words. Everyone uses it, so it gets legitimized. For villages and rural development, you need appropriate technology. Then pray somebody, please educate me what kind of technology you need to have to push a rocket beyond the stratosphere. Inappropriate technology. And I could give you plenty of examples where words which we use are such stirring examples of our inability to think. Therefore, the point I am trying to make is technology must be developed in conjunction with the resources needed. There is nothing grand about high tech. Everyone wants to go high tech. I do not understand why. I would much remain low tech. The newspapers today had it, if you care to go through it, that there are jams so large around Beijing that trucks are stranded on such a broad trunk route as Tibet Beijing, which were supposed to carry essential goods to Beijing. Now, of course, development is more cars. Somebody told me you are putting 5,000 cars on the streets of Delhi every day. Now, where do you drive it to? They had a cartoon which dealt with, they called the fantasy of Einstein, where he was shown walking on the rooftop of cars, and this was several decades ago. That is there around the corner. All that I am trying to say is, what is so great about high tech? What is so great about more and more and more? Somewhere these paradigms of management will have to be revised in the context of what the customer needs. So, first you whip up the demand of the automobiles, then you choke the roads, then you start cutting down on the movement of the automobiles, and you say you cannot enter. Then why were you permitting the promotion of automobiles? I spent my life saving trying to get that car to compete with my brother-in-law because I had to satisfy my wife. And now that I have brought it, you say you can't drive it into Connaught Place, it is legally barred. So, what am I supposed to do with this toy? Take it home, enjoy it. Ultimately, technology has to be developed with reference to the user profile. Something may be a technological delight and a utility disaster. Not many people would agree with that statement if they did not have a clear-cut notion on technology. But remember, we are talking of the impact of environment and culture on structure and style, and we are trying to define technology which determines organizational culture and which determines organizational style. Therefore, the only technology which is worth being adopted, bought, adapted, integrated into organization is which is consistent with the organizational needs. Anything else is going to throw things out of gear. The role of organizational technology: inputs, transformation, outputs. The inputs are people, materials, equipment, money, plant and facility. The outputs are product, service, job satisfaction, profits. Under the transformation process comes mass energy conversion. Mass energy conversion is the only thing which adds value to a proposition or a product or a service. There are different types of technology, and of course, I shall refer to a host of Western authors, because they are the serious ones worth referring to in popular perception, and no discourse of this type would ever be considered complete without reference to several Western authors and at least find out what they have got to say. One day it will be useful also to find out what is the anti-version and what did the people who did not come from the Western background have to say. For example, if ultimately the sources of energy run short, which they will one day, and if there is so much pollution that your lungs are affected and your breathing is affected. I remember about 6 or 7 years ago getting out of a train at the Dehradun station, and there was so much pollution that my eyes were shedding. Tears is the only word which goes from what comes out from the eye, but it was painful, so you can take it as tears. There was so much pollution just as you exited the station that your eyes were burning, and they all came for overused engines of three-wheelers, till it reached a point when they had to do something about it. What is the point I am trying to make? There is a non-Western view on technology also, and I am not suggesting a warfare between one region of the world to another. It is just a caption. There are many people even from the West who have seen technology as the problem. Take Jacques Ellul, for example, an outstanding French scholar, who said the problem is the technology itself. Now, that will be called a non-Western view, because the dominant version originating from there would see a lot of virtue in technology. So, let us not get lost in semantic wars. So long as you understand where this presentation is coming from, and so long as you understand where it is headed, let us look at what some of the people have got to say. Based on the works of Thomson and Perot, there are three kinds of technologies. They are mediating technologies, long link technologies, and intensive technologies. Their categorization is based on task interdependence, identifying low, medium and high level of interdependence needed to perform tasks. Let us look at each one of them. What is a mediating technology? Mediating technology is one which deals with low interdependence, which is to say that different parts of the whole organization are relatively independent of each other. Remember my presentation of the organization structure, where I tried to show to you that in a mixed matrix form of organization, you may have one division looking like a pyramid, another division looking like a project form, another division like a collegian form, and there will be linking pins. Clearly, each of the divisions is broadly related to each other, but functions in a style which is independent of each other. For example, as I explained to you, a marketing division will not function in the same way as an audit division. If it does, God help you. And an audit division will presumably not work in the same way as R&D division. So, the structures will be different. So, therein you have the use of the word that is called mediating technologies. Low interdependence, which is to say that different parts of the whole organization are relatively independent of each other. Few demands are placed on coordination of the parts, cooperative decision making and the like. This type of technology is best suited for bureaucratic structures and high standardization as the dominant integrator. In other words, the organization pulls together because of rules, regulations, processes, which makes it a bureaucratic organization. Remember our discussion on what is bureaucratic. Again, while listening to these presentations, you cannot understand them in silos. The concepts explained in the preceding sessions will be used as the bedrock of explaining this. So, you have to take it as a full package. Clearly, for this kind of presentation, mediating technology of instruction is not of great use, because there is high degree of interdependence. The concepts are being borrowed from one lecture to another. But whereas, if each lecture were to be a standalone lecture, then you could say the lecture method of presentation in this particular domain is mediating. So, the integration of an organization where you have high degree of independence and relatively lower degree of interdependence would require a bureaucratic structure, would require standardization of a higher order, and these two will be the dominant integrators. The long linked technologies, this is characterized by moderate interdependence, technologies with sequential interdependence, and typified say by an auto assembly plant or a school of cafeterias or school cafeterias. Because these technologies demand coordination amongst the parts, management needs to plan ahead. Let us go back to the previous slide. For mediating technology, the organizational style would be bureaucratic. That is the correlation which I wish you to understand. This has got nothing to do with the kind of blouse you wear and the kind of shirt you wear and how is it styled. No. It has got nothing to do with whether your trousers goes down to your ankle or stop 3/4 of the way or half the way, or where do they stop. We are talking of organizational style, and a mediating technology creates a bureaucratic style. Remember what I said right at the beginning of the session. Similarly, for a long linked technologies, these technologies demand coordination amongst parts, management needs to plan ahead. A bureaucratic structure with planning is best suited for technology. So, bureaucratic structure is back, but planning is the dominant component of that package. To use long linked technologies, you need an organizational style which has planning at its core. You can't say, I will think about it when the time comes, let us cross the bridge when it comes, I do not know, one step at a time, I do not look at the future, do not hassle me, I do not believe in planning. Well, then my advice is, do not go in for long linked technologies. Thus, if you are so bindas, as you do not know at 4 o'clock in the evening what you would want to do at 7 o'clock in the evening, in terms of whether you would want to go to a movie, or you would want to go to a theater, or you would want to go for a walk, or you would want to go for a restaurant, or you would want to just call on a friend and you still want to chill, well then good luck to you. This style does not suit you, and it will not go very far either, because to have a steady support system for whatever you wish to do, you must have a steady planning system. You violate that, you violate it at your own cost. Intensive technologies are reciprocal interdependency. This has very high degree of interdependence, has the greatest amount of task interdependency. It does not move till it receives the input, and of course, it is not satisfied till it passes on the impact. It makes the greatest demand on managerial decision making of communication and control. Therefore, the style will be of communication and control, keep everyone in the loop. because what is happening at one end will be impacting what is happening at another end. Examples of organization using this kind of technology includes construction firms, mental health clinics, hospitals and more. The technology which the anesthesiologist or the anesthetist uses is central to the kind of technology which the surgeon is going to use, and there is total interdependency. If the anesthetist is not at work in a correct sense, the operation itself will be a disaster. Therefore, you need high degree of coordination. Unlike what I was trying to explain in mediating technologies, where you could work in fairly isolated silos and yet the work will go on. So, in a mediating technology, the style is bureaucratic. In a intensive technology, the style is of coordination. I shall pick up the presentation with Thompson's classification by task interdependence in a while.